What's going on, everybody? It's Jamie,
And John,
and welcome to the A-to-Z Reseller Podcast. How are you doing this week, John?
good man, not bad at all. What is this, episode 6 or something, or six?
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
great. Time's really flying.
yeah. It's crazy. It's good though.
Yeah. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been hectic. I've been buying a lot. I thought really right now I kind of expected to be. I'm running sales, and my initial thought was to get rid of a lot of stuff, and I've just had like the weirdest opportunities to buy stuff. So like the next few videos that come out on my channel will definitely be like bulk buys of bigger inventory. So it's kind of fun. I mean, I like doing it, but it's definitely takes up a lot more time. If you just go
Yeah.
thrift 10 or 15 things and you're just dealing with those, it's not such a big deal. But now if you all of a sudden have hundreds of things to deal with, a lot
Yeah.
more to do. And then, it seems like as soon as I get into a situation like that, something else comes up that's too good to turn down. And then, it's sitting on a whole pile of stuff.
Yeah, man, it's feast or famine. Like it's funny how Rick sometimes, sales would be really good for a couple of weeks. We got big influx of cash flow. We're like, all right, let's go out and just source a whole bunch, get a whole bunch of stuff, and we're trying to ramp up as well, and increase the amount of listings per day and stuff. And then we start doing that. We're like, yeah, this is going to be great. Like sales have been awesome, and then all of a sudden things just start tanking, and it's been a really slow week. But it's just weird. That's why I always say, like, you never really know what's happening. It doesn't matter how good of a reseller you are. Like, we're at the mercy of whatever the hell's going on. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whether you're out looking for a private buy or doing whatever, or like, yeah, you could walk into a thrift store with the intention to spend money, and there's just nothing there to buy to, right? Like you're right, it is feast or famine, and you have to be prepared always for whatever's coming your way.
Yep, adaptability for sure.
Yeah. I know one of the things we were going to talk about this week was, potentially how people view reselling and how people view resellers, essentially. So like, when you're trying to make profit off of somebody, is that a good thing? A lot of people do envision you as sort of ripping people off, and that's sort of the negative, thing people kind of spin towards it. But what do you think about that?
I got a lot of thoughts on this one, and something that happened to me here just last week is, well, first of all, I'll just say, like, obviously, I don't think it's ripping anybody off. I mean, this is literally business. That's how every single business ever in the history of business works. If you're not making a profit, if you're not gaining something from doing it, you're wasting your time, and obviously, you're not going to, be successful. But it's so funny, like this whole reseller thing. I had a Facebook Marketplace situation. I had just these two little IKEA shelves, like nothing special, just a couple of little $9 shelves. They were still new and sealed. I guess I picked them up at a flea market or a yard sale or something somewhere, or maybe in like a bargain bin or something for $1.50 a piece. I didn't remember that, but apparently I left like a small little sticker on one of the shelves. So in my listing, if you zoom in, you can see that I only paid $1.50 each. I had no idea. So, I mean, I had them listed for like $15, still a good deal. Anybody who wants a couple of $10 shelves, now you're getting two for 15. You don't have to drive to IKEA to get them. Like someone offered $10, I would have taken them. Like, I literally don't even know where these came from. I just knew that we had no use for them. So I was like, I should sell them. And so this woman messages me, and she's like, hey, I was going to buy these. Like, this is a good price, and I want these shelves, but I see you only paid this for them, and now I don't want them because you're just ripping people off.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I can't understand that logic, because if I walk into a store, or I see something online, or whatever the situation is, and I see something I like, I see a price I'm willing to pay, and I'm happy with that, I don't care what happens other than that. Like, I don't care if that person is making 2% margin, 500% margin. It makes no difference. Like that, I'm not going to take that personally, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just weird. But then the funny thing is, at the end of it, after a little bit of back and forth, after I did get a little bit snarky, I was like, I don't know, make sure you tell the grocery store and the gas station and every single other business in the world that when you check out, you only want to pay their cost, and see how that goes for you. And she's like, well, hey, I'll just pray for you that these actually sell. And they did actually sell the next day. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of times you'd be better off to just ignore it, but it isn't always so easy, right? Like when people push your buttons, it's easy to say, oh, just forget it. But I mean, some people are good at it, right? And most likely somebody like that person is doing that on purpose to push your buttons, right? Because
Mm.
you wouldn't just do that. Like even if you thought it was a good deal, you'd still buy it. Maybe she'd mention it and say like, hey, maybe you should, like maybe you should have removed that sticker and maybe ask for a better deal or something. But like probably had no intentions of buying them and just wanted to like roast you a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, had it happened on, a platform where I'm an established seller and obviously like things mean a little bit more like Poshmark or eBay, then I wouldn't have responded with, a snarky comment or something, obviously. Would have
Yeah.
been like, hey, I didn't realize that. I can give you a better deal. Like I would have, kind of offered that a little bit more. But when we're talking Facebook Marketplace and some local woman wants to get up in my grill, well, listen here, lady.
Yeah. I've been doing a little bit more marketplace recently. You'll see in a video, like I said, come up soon, but you can see there's like some shoes beside me.
Yeah.
I've been actually trying to sell quite a few of them just on marketplace because people like a deal, and I really like to lead in with I have a lot of these and I'm selling different shoes to try to get people enticed because I'll get lowball offers and I'm like, I just listed these. I have a lot of interest. Marketplace, though, is one of those places I find where getting an actual person to come to your house or meeting up with them is a whole nother story. Like you can get interest in people with all kind of conversations, but they've almost made Facebook Marketplace too broad. Like I realize you can set the radius of how far you want to look, but I'll have people like in Toronto looking at stuff and ask questions, and I'm like, you're not driving 2 hours to my house to get these. Like I wish it wouldn't even be an option. I wish as a seller you could even set that up as like have to be within like maybe
Limit the views or something to a certain range.
yeah, because it is annoying. And I love marketplace because you can offload things to maybe, well, these things you could sell online, but there's lots of big things you can sell to people that you maybe wouldn't list online. But the whole process of it is so annoying with like just the constant messaging with like it's worse than eBay and stuff like that for sure, as far as being a nuisance for messages.
I think so, for sure. I mean, you get ghosted so often, and I think it's funny because there's been so many times where someone does buy something, and this goes right back to the main point of this whole section here is like someone does buy something, and then maybe it's like an N64 game or something like that, or maybe I sell them a console or something, and then they've paid for it. They're happy. They're so pumped. They just got this deal, they're walking away with a box of video games and stuff. And then they're like, yeah, so like, do you have other stuff you want to sell? And then if I mention like, oh yeah, like I'm always looking, I always like shop deals, or maybe it's on my own personal stuff, but like, I do buy and sell a lot of video game kind of stuff. You can see it in their eyes. It's like, oh no, did I just get ripped off? Like something changes in there. They were happy 5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
But then when I mentioned that I might have made $3 off of what I just sold them, it's like a switch hits and they're like, wait a second, did I just get duped? I don't know why people are so defensive about that. And it's the same thing as like thrift stores or wherever else. I mean, it doesn't matter, any store really. Like let's say it's a thrift store, or let's say Canadian Tire has a clearance sale and 80% off sticker on something, and then you buy it and you go resell it. Like,
yeah,
why do they care? Or why would they care what you're going to do with it after you buy their product and leave the store with it and you've paid them the amount they were asking, right? But I've noticed also like thrift stores do tend to some thrift stores are weird about resellers. It's like, well, we don't want you in here buying all our stuff at our advertised prices. You're going to go make money. Well, okay. I mean, you could sell it for higher. Like if I sell something and then I realize someone else sells it for more and they've made a profit, like good for them. I might be a little bit disappointed that I didn't get what I could have out of it, but at the same time, it's like, I don't care,
Yeah. I think locally for me is as far as that pricing idea goes, where like for a thrift store anyway, I feel like they're selling it for, usually depending on the thrift store, they're usually trying to like, there's some sort of charity involved or whatever. Right. So for the most part, I'm usually told when there's sales. Like if I'm at the cashier, they'll be like, hey, did you know this Friday there's this sale happening, or did you know at the end of the month we're doing this? So I think for the most part it's a good relationship for me in my area, but I could see how I could see how other people who shop there may be annoyed that you buy stuff up, but
Mm,
you would think or hope that the thrift shop owner, whether it is for a charity or is for the individual, they're pricing their items as they see fit. So you're just paying what it'd be like me turning down sales, like, oh, I don't want somebody from Quebec to buy my stuff because
yeah,
I only want to sell to the rest of Canada, right? Like I know that's a maybe like a weird thing, but like that seems sort of very similar, right? Like,
yeah.
okay,
It's the
it's
same principle. It's selective. Like it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
right, yeah. But yeah, also, I guess we're also going to get into problem buyers. I know we're kind of talking about that now, but like,
Mm,
you know, how much do you really want to put up with issues online before you just put your foot down? And how like, and what is the line somebody can cross that's just sort of like too far? Obviously, there's things you can do as a seller if somebody is a problem, and you can block them on eBay. I think on other platforms you can block people. I know I've blocked people on Poshmark and eBay both. I think just those two platforms. Uh,
mm.
Maybe Facebook Marketplace as well. Now that I think about it, but I mean, what point do you have to be where you're going to start blocking buyers, or like you maybe even like report somebody?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one thing to have a little banter with somebody on Marketplace or something, but when you're talking about like a platform like eBay or Poshmark, I mean, they make enough money for me. Like that is an important enough thing for me that I can't tolerate the same kind of nonsense, right?
Yeah,
So for me, it's like I kind of have a general rule of thumb, and like I'm one of these people. Like I'm not a religious person, or whatever, but I feel like the whole golden rule is treat others how you want to be treated, and I think that's pretty universal, constant around most belief systems and societies. And I just kind of follow that, where it's like if someone is just rude to me out of the gate, or they're messaging and just being like unreasonable about things, even if they did have like an issue, like say I sold them something and maybe there was a little more wear on it than advertised, or maybe like even if it was my bad, if someone's just going right off on me to start, if they're actually using like profanity or something in an eBay message or whatever, like then I don't care. I'm reporting that immediately to eBay, and they're going to lose out on the opportunity to get a refund or something like that, because eBay is not going to tolerate that either. But I mean, if somebody messages me and says, hey, like either I bought this item from you and I have this concern, or maybe it's I'm interested in this, but your price is kind of high or something like that. Can we work out a deal? Like I see that that's always an opportunity to have a repeat buyer like that. There's so many opportunities to just do something that even if it means I don't make as much today, I could secure somebody coming back over and over again. So they get one shot basically, right? Like I feel like most people deserve that one chance to like work with them and figure something out, and like try to bring it around and be polite about it. But yeah, if they cross the line at all, or sometimes there's red flags too, like people are just asking a million really specific questions up front before they buy something. That is a red flag that I probably don't want to buy to them, because they're gonna be a problem buyer. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my take on it. It's kind of a vague answer, but um, I will report anything that is out of line, because I don't have space for that in my life.
yeah, no, I feel the same way. And like I said, I know I have blocked people that I were a nuisance. But the one thing I guess we don't talk about either is sort of like the other side of that. I deal with a lot of people who potentially could be terrible and try to like ruffle you up, and they're not. They're like, dealt with somebody last week I sold a keyboard to. They said first they started with like, hey, I already left you positive feedback, but now I realize this one key isn't working. um and then we talked about like a scenario of what we could do, and then I wound up saying to him like, you know what, you've been really good about this. I normally just refund people. This particular case, I'm going to ship it back to myself because I tested this keyboard out, so I kind of feel like I just wanted to see it for myself, and I could sell it for parts after the fact if I really wanted to. Um, so in that case, this person was very reasonable, that maybe they didn't have the same options because they already did leave positive feedback and whatever. But there are lots of times where I get messages from people who are like, hey, there's this issue. What do I do? I know another one this past week was somebody had said that they bought a lot of DVDs, like sealed media from me. like Blank Media, and they had said, hey, like I got a message from the shipping company and it says the address is incorrect. And then they sent me a screenshot of the address, and I'm like, okay. So I went back and looked, and I'm like, can you verify your address? And they did. And the address that they gave me was the address that was on the label that I used, because I went back to Stallion Express, pulled their label. And so I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Like, so I sent them a screenshot of the label and said, hey, this is what it is. Like, if they're saying it's wrong for some reason, they're wrong. So I don't know what was happening there. But at first I thought the guy was just trying to get me to like send him another one, a refund. But like, there are so many occasions where things don't go smoothly, but somebody is really, you know, just willing to talk it through with you and try to figure out a solution. The solution there was I said, like, if it winds up getting shipped back to me for some reason, you know, I would just charge you the cost of shipping, and then we'll make sure it goes to the right place, or try to anyway. Right. So I think just being reasonable is the right thing to do, but there are just that slight amount of people who are unreasonable. And like you said, there are sort of triggers that you can see, you know, odd questions. I know I got questions about a jersey the other day. I needed my Olympics jersey from 2010. They said, hey, I'm really interested in this, you know, are there any marks, stains, or rips? And I'm like, my response was, hey, listen, it's a used jersey. I would expect to have some imperfections, but there's nothing that I'm trying to hide from you here. But like somebody, when they ask that, it's sort of like, it's almost like they're setting you up to say like, no, it's in perfect condition. Maybe they see a flaw in a picture and they're just trying to, like, you know what I mean? Your mind starts to think of those things after you've been selling online for a while, because those are things that have happened.
Yeah, that does happen. And that actually is a similar thing just happened to me here in the last few days. I know people try to give you, like, they try to get you, they lay traps, right? Like, it does happen, and you can spot them once you get used to it. Especially if you mention and give a very good detailed description in your item description, and you show good photos and stuff showing any imperfections or whatnot. And then they message with, hey, you know, so I had a sealed Wii U game that I have listed. And, you know, I mentioned like, hey, it's in really good condition. It's new and it's sealed, and there's no rips or tears in the plastic or anything like that. But you can tell there's a small amount of shelf wear. Like, this might not be perfect for someone who is looking for a pristine copy for their collection, or to send it off and get it graded or something like that. Like, it's probably not for you if that's your intent. But otherwise, this is perfect. Like, if you're going to take the wrapper off and play this game, it is a brand new copy with no flaws. And, you know, so of course someone was asking me those same questions, is like, you know, number one, does it come from a smoke-free home? Okay, fair question, right? I know that can be a big thing for people, but, you know, can you describe the shelfware? Can you describe any imperfections, any sticker residue, and all these things? And it's like, my reply to them was simply, I cover all of this in my description and photos. Please review my listing again. And if you have any questions after that, get back to me. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes the safest bet.
Yep. I do the same thing with, like, you know, when people are asking about sizing and whatever, but I don't do, my descriptions aren't usually that detailed. A lot of times I'll just copy the title, and if there's no discrepancies whatsoever, I'm okay with that. I don't really need a description past that. But if there are flaws that I know could be an issue, I will put them in the description. And a lot of times, especially with clothing, like if it was something wrong here, I would take a pen or an item and point to that item and make sure that in the listing it says that and shows that and says to refer back to the photos. And that's the sort of things you do to cover yourself, right? Like,
no, exactly. And that I think is the biggest takeaway for me as far as dealing with problematic customers, is doing everything you can to avoid and prevent problematic customers, because it is on you to make sure that, like, you're not allowing yourself to get trapped. And then, but I mean, hey, if something comes up and people are reasonable about it, then yeah, I mean, like, you know, stuff happens, right?
For sure. And like I said, unfortunately, especially as probably in social media like this, we don't say enough good things about the people who are great on eBay or on other platforms. You know, like my feedback is, you know, I think it's like 99.4. And I would say that's probably pretty accurate. I wouldn't say I have 100% service for everybody. But I would also reverse that and say probably 99% of the people I talk to on eBay on all these platforms are excellent and really easy to deal with. It's just that small amount that become difficult.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Hey, quick little break in the chat here to say hi to Marley. She just jumped up on my lap, so I figured I would share with the team here. So Marley is my little baby, and she turns 19 on the 25th, or no, the 15th. Sorry. So, and she's got a vet appointment on that day, so that'll be fun. But anyway, in case you guys start seeing tails whipping around, that's not mine. It's Kitty on the lap.
Yeah, 19, eh? That's wild.
Yeah, yeah, and she's like 6 pounds, tiny little thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've our rescue cat, or technically both of the cats we have are rescue cats, but the older, I would think the older of the two, Leo, the long hair one, which sometimes you'll see in this room in videos, has been liking to sleep on shelves. I've been kicking her out of this room just because I've been finding more and more hair on stuff, and I'm like, I really don't want that. But now she's been sleeping in our bathroom. We've got like a laundry chute, and it's just like a little laundry chute that sits up about like 3.5 feet tall. And she's just in there curled up on it. And it's got like a handle on it. It's like, it is the most uncomfortable place. Cats are just so funny.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, definitely.
If you could think of a spot you don't want them to be, that's where they want to be.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, so getting back into some reselling stuff here. How your week was good? I know we talked about that a little bit. Did you have a particular sale of the week?
Yeah. So I did, and this was a very, very quick flip, and I intentionally priced it a little bit low because I wanted it to move a little quicker to recoup some of the money that I just spent that day. But I had a Patagonia Chinchilla, like snap tee kind of sweater, like light jacket sweater type thing, and in like a very Aztec Southwestern pattern. And it wasn't a small size. It was a women's small or medium. I can't remember which one. But it was funny. I was browsing through the thrift store. We were in there just kind of looking around, and man, like, I don't know, it just seemed like the shelves or the racks were half empty and things weren't going all that great. And then, the end of my rotation was to start going towards the women's jackets and stuff. And I spotted it literally from like 20 feet away. I was like, oh my God, that is a Chinchilla Aztec. I need to get over there. And I actually found like 3 Patagonias right next to each other, and that was one of them. But it did have a small, tiny little flaw down on the back, like right where the fabric meets the hem. It wasn't even really like a hole in the fabric, but the fabric had let go from the hem itself. So it created a small little hole there. I mean, that particular sweater regularly sells for like $90 to $110, but I put it on eBay, I think, for around $60, and Poshmark for around $70. And someone offered me $55 on Poshmark. So, I mean, I just took it. Like, I priced it lower because of the flaw, but also I was going to take a little bit less for it. So, sale of the week, not because it was like a ton of money, but because there was a story behind it, and it moved within like an hour of listing. So,
yeah, I love those quick sales. Like anything you list, it always, I know I've said this a few different times, probably even on this podcast, but you always wonder if you list it and it sells right away, if it's that desirable, or if you just listed it too low and somebody sniped it. But regardless, there's so many things that happen like that I don't usually even care.
No, exactly. I mean, like, okay, if I could hold something for 3 months and make $70, or I can list it and sell it the same day and make $50, I know what I'm going to choose every time. Every time.
Yeah. Which kind of gonna pull an audible. I was going to talk about a jacket that sold, but now that we're talking about this, I have something very similar. It was an Olympus. I just shipped it this morning. It was an Olympus Infinity. I think it's called Infinity Stylist Zoom 105. I'll throw the exact one up on the screen anyway when I do edit this. But, so I picked this camera up last week at I think Salvation Army for $7. Assumed it was going to be good. It was one of the ones that it is waterproof, but it's a film camera, but it's partially, there's no digital screen, but it has like on the top, there's like a digital like little reader, and it's partially digital. But regardless, I knew it was good when I seen it, so I just grabbed it. I didn't even comp it in store. Came home, did a little research. I thought it was worth about $85. I think I listed it for that and then sold it same day for a best offer of, I think it was like 72 or 74. I'm like, that's close enough. Yeah. I'll take it. And then that night, so that all happened on Sunday. That night, I was on the Scott Sell Stuff show, and that was one of the items I was showing. At that moment, I don't think I realized I sold it yet. So I'm showing the item, and we're talking about it. I'm saying, yeah, and I think it's worth like, $80 or something like that. And one of the other guys is like, oh no, I've sold that camera a bunch of times for like 150, 250.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh no, like I'm gonna have to take a better look at this, because I think because it was waterproof was why it was maybe worth a little bit more than the other one I was comped against. And I looked, and I had already sold it or whatever for this. I'm like, you know what? I'm still happy with the $70 or $75, whatever. I never did go back and deep dive to see if it really was that one that was maybe worth $150. I just thought, like, you know what, if that guy bought it, he's gonna flip it for $150. Good for him. I overlooked it potentially. And I felt funny because when I was talking to those guys, I thought of it in my head, and I didn't really think like, oh, maybe I should say to them I already listed it. I just said, oh, well, I'll just go back and fix the listing later. But I didn't, and it sold.
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, it's one of those things. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, you still made $60-$70 or something like that. I mean, like, it's the same day, so you got some money back right away. Like, that's a win for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you say, if someone else grabbed that, they sniped it, now they're going to go make some money off of it too. I mean, does that actually hurt you in any way? Like, does that make them, some kind of rip-off artist or some scummy person? Like, no, it doesn't. Good for them, good for you. You all win, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the kind of the way I like to think about it. Obviously, if or if I would have spent more time, I probably would have listed it higher, but
right.
It doesn't really ruffle my feathers or make me that irritated that something like that would happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think one of the other things this week I really I've been thinking about was, and the same thing I know I've talked about, probably talked about this before, even on the podcast, on my own channel, I talk about it every once in a while, is sort of like making sure you have some money in savings for when opportunities come up. First of all, that you have the money to buy things. And the other thing is you want to avoid putting things on credit cards. And, if you don't have the money to buy things, it has to be like an unbelievable deal where this is going to turn over super quick, because you're going to pay interest if you're borrowing money, right? So,
yeah,
it's just hard. It's hard to get that across to people, because a lot of people, like, oh, I could spend all this money. Well, like, you got to remember, when you buy things to sell, they don't sell instantly. There's we're talking about a few things that do sell instantly, but even things like these shoes beside me that are brand new in box, I don't expect any of these to sell instantly. Some of them might, but I'm probably going to sit on them for a long time. So I just think it's super important that people kind of like save some of that money and bank it up, even if it's just a little portion that can add up over time. If somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I've got this great big video game bundle, or you go to a yard sale, or maybe you get invited in their house because you're talking about video games to buy more video games. You don't have those funds. It's hard.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. And that's, it's funny that you bring that up, because that was a major conversation that I had within the last couple of days with my girlfriend, who, does help sourcing with me and processing all of our stuff. And, we talk about kind of our thought processes and our plans and all that kind of stuff. And, because we're doing it part-time, and, we do a payout every week, like from eBay, and then I cash out on Poshmark every week, so that every Tuesday money's hitting our accounts. We have constant cash flow and stuff. We do always have like enough money to go out sourcing and doing the things that we normally do. But yeah, having that extra. So we actually just devised a plan. We kind of changed up our structure a little bit just over the next like maybe month or two to build up going into yard sale season, especially, is what we were talking. Because I mean, yeah, if I see somebody looking to sell off a huge video game bundle, like, I mean, how much do you want for it all? Would you take $500? Because I know it's worth $2,000. Like, yeah. I want to have that $500 available and not even have to worry about it, stress about it, go take money off a card or something. Like, I want to be able to be like, okay, do you want me to go get cash or e-transfer? Like, what do you want? And take advantage of those situations. it's tough when you find a bunch of really good deals all in a short period of time. I was there last year where it was like, oh man, I just absolutely need to jump on every single one of these opportunities because it was too good. So in that case, I did actually put some money on a card. Well, it did like a cash advance or whatever for a couple $100 for something. But I mean, that was a very calculated thing. And I knew that I was going to have the cash flow to pay that back off within like a week. And then I did end up making like several $100s off it, but I don't recommend that. You know, that has to be a very extreme, like, okay, think about it. Don't just do it. Right.
Yeah, no, I have done it too. I mean, I'm somewhat speaking from experience. Like, it's just not a great, and it's not a great thing to get in the habit of doing, right? Like,
No.
and I'm not saying it's even a bad thing. There are scenarios where it's probably, you know, the only way you can buy something. If you were going to spend $10,000, it might not be that easy to go spend $10,000. Maybe you would need to pull it from
Yep.
someone, but you do need to have some sort of game plan to pay that back, right? You can't just um, assume it's all things are going to sell. So like you would have to figure, you know, a portion of that going back against it or whatever. It's just a bad business model to start using credit cards if you don't have to. But it's not always, like it's not always a bad idea. And yeah,
No. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because like, so one of the things, you know, and we've talked about it plenty of times here on this podcast, but like, you know, we're really heavily paying off debt right now. Like that's been our focus. You know, we just bought this house 3 years ago and obviously, you know, got into some debt and all the rest and things like that. But but we are very aggressively paying things down and the reselling is helping make that happen. It would be pretty counterintuitive for us to then just be, you know, making extra payments and doing all these things, but then just going out and buying a whole bunch of stuff on credit cards and like not really making any headway, just kind of spinning our wheels. We'd be better off just being like less aggressive on the payments and allowing more for, you know, investment into the reselling instead of just moving money back and forth 17 times in a week or something.
yeah,
But no, I mean, it's obviously a very personal thing and it depends on what, you know, what everybody's situation is. But yeah, I think it is a very, very important thing to consider. I mean, you know, if you normally spend just as like a part-time reseller, maybe you normally spend $100 a week on new inventory. Maybe it's $200. Like you should probably have a pool though of maybe like 400 or 500 in case something comes up. You know, this just throwing numbers out there. I mean, that number is going to change for everyone, but ideally, going into yard sale season, I want to have like a couple $1,000 that I can tap into if needed. So, kind of working towards that now.
yeah, yeah. And I think that is a great thing for anybody to do. And you're also doing the right thing. Also, I should commend you on that. So because step one, I know you're not trying to become a full-time reseller or anything like that. You're happy being a casual reseller, part-time. You can ramp your business up and still have a full-time job. But step one, for me, when I was thinking about becoming full-time, pay off my debt. Now it took a while, but I really did the same thing. I took all my extra money that wasn't going to be for inventory, and I just dumped it on everything that was debt. Besides, I don't consider vehicle debt like debt. It's debt that I have to have because I'm not a mechanical person. I'm not going to be fixing my car every week because I would have to pay somebody anyway. But yeah, it's the second that I paid off all that debt, I honestly didn't know what to do with that money. So
I know.
then, and it was a freeing feeling, and it allowed me to obviously save up enough money to feel comfortable to pull the plug on the regular job. And
Yep.
you know, the unfortunate thing is opportunities come up. Like we had the opportunity to buy this spa, so I took basically my nest egg that made me feel safe to be running around doing this, threw it into something else. But you know, that opportunity, the same thing wouldn't have been there if I would have had debt and still had all those things, I wouldn't have been able to save up the money to help, you know, buy a spa with my wife. And you know, I'm still successfully running my own business here. I eventually will hopefully get that money back out of the spa. So that money hopefully will come back to me. And then potentially more money over time will come back to me out of that. But none of that's possible, in my opinion, without paying that debt off first. So like once you pay off that debt, it's so freeing not to have it. It gives you so many more opportunities because all this extra money that you're making is now just your money.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, yeah, you know, there's room for me to scale up and probably do double the reselling I'm doing now, and especially with my girlfriend able to help with that and stuff, like, we can ramp up big time, but we're not going to ramp up more quickly than we can do comfortably. Like, we've got to take care of this first, or as we go, and that's the plan. And it's nice to know, it's nice to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, we could ramp up and do more reselling, but whatever we choose to do, the reselling is what's allowing it to happen, which is just beautiful, right? Like I make enough money at my job to pay the bills and stuff, but like this reselling thing is really helping to change our future, and pretty near-term future too.
Yeah, and it's great too. And like, I think you'd mentioned before that your kind of plan was to like set yourself up really good for retirement after, right? Like, and the cool thing about that is, when you do hit the point where you're ready to retire, you can say goodbye to the job, but you could still part-time resell, because as long as you still enjoy it. That's one of the things that's so great about it is work, but it is enjoyable. It's like I said, it's modern, sometimes doesn't feel like it's so much modern day treasure hunting when you're looking at clothing and whatever. Some of that can get boring to like look at after a while, but when you're out just buying stuff, like that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. And one kind of tie-in thought to that I have, and it's something else that we talked about recently in this household, is like, I think a lot of people maybe our age or a little younger, I think that sometimes the whole like hustle culture thing, it gets painted two very different ways. Number one, like hustle culture is sometimes like frowned upon because some people feel like it's like a way to justify living in a crappy economy, and like it takes away from the real issues, and we shouldn't have to hustle or have a side hustle or something like that to pay the bills. And I get that. But also, like, we are living in a time and in a world where like it's never been easier to make extra money. So like for me, it doesn't feel like a side hustle because, I work my 40 hours at my regular job, and then if I put 10, 15, maybe even 20 other hours in, like throughout the days and the weekends, on something I enjoy doing, and that's enough to like completely change the trajectory of my life, I don't even feel like that is a hustle. That's just me taking control and choosing my own destiny, right? So it's very empowering too.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. That's one of the things I enjoy about it, and it gives you the freedom and flexibility, especially maybe a little bit different for me, but I could put in a lot more time today, so I could do something I really want to do tomorrow that maybe isn't reselling.
Yeah.
For the casual person, maybe that's like a vacation you want to take, or the new video game you want to buy, and you can't really justify it. But if you spend a few hours at night doing this, that, or the other, maybe buying that video game is not a big deal anymore.
Yeah, that's just it. And I mean, it's easy for us to kind of plan out and budget things for those extras because we can see the little bit of extra work really paying off. So we can make a plan that says, hey, next week out of our payout, let's do this. Let's take this small fraction of our payout that's literally extra money to us next week and do this thing with it. And so it just comes down to having options, right? All right, everybody, that wraps up today's episode. Thanks very much for watching. I know we get into a few different topics and went off on some tangents as we always do, but we do appreciate all the support here, all the comments. By all means, any questions or anything about whatever we've talked about here today, or if you have a topic that you think might be good for another episode that you'd like us to deep dive on, by all means, leave it down below and we'll get to it. So thanks very much for watching episode 5 or 6, I've already forgotten, of the Eh-To-Zed Reseller podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.